paying attention to our experiences. And it's an attention that looks how our internal world is interacting at a specific moment with that external world. And this special way of paying attention, it's sharp, but it has this characteristic of being open, it's curious, and it's non-judgmental. And through certain exercises, it helps us increase our capacity of being aware. Mindfulness can help us in many, many ways. It can reduce stress, improves mental health. It definitely increases focus and concentration. It gives us a sense of greater self-awareness. It can improve our relationships. It's helpful with pain management. It can give us a lot of tools to have better coping skills. So it can increase our sense of resilience.
Hello, and a very warm welcome to the Journey Journals by Life of Gaia. My name is Gaia, and today we are going to take an interesting journey into mindfulness and share some important exercises and tips that you can make use of in your day-to-day life. Now, the reason for this interview is that not too long ago, we interviewed Juliana Moss, who I'll tell you a little bit about her shortly. But we did a fascinating interview on the intersection between mindfulness and spirituality. And we thought it would be helpful to those who watch to go through some practical tips and exercises on how to implement this in your day-to-day life. Now, Juliana Moss, who I'm delighted to have with me again here today. Welcome, Juliana.
Thank you, Gaia. I am delighted to be here with you, sharing this space and this beautiful, thing that you're doing here by putting so many knowledge together and people having the access to it. So I am really grateful for you to be doing this and for me to be part of it.
Likewise, and thank you so much for joining us again. Now, for those of you who didn't watch the first interview, Juliana is a mindfulness meditation teacher. She is also a Reiki practitioner. She is a plant medicine facilitator who specializes in helping people integrate plant medicine journeys, but mostly from the perspective of mindfulness and also ancestral healing. So it's a pleasure to have you back here again, Juliana. And I wanted to start off with a talk around mindfulness and the importance around it, because I know that mindfulness is, a lot in function of helping reduce stress or improve well-being, or even just enhancing self-awareness. So I wanted to ask you if you could briefly tell us what mindfulness is and why it is so important.
Yes, Gaia, of course. What mindfulness teaches us is a special way of paying attention to our experiences. And it's an attention that looks how our internal world is interacting at a specific moment with that external world. And this special way of paying attention, it's sharp, but it has this characteristic of being open, it's curious, and it's non-judgmental. And through certain exercises, it helps us increase our capacity of being aware. Mindfulness can help us in many, many ways. It can reduce stress, improves mental health. It definitely increases focus and concentration. It gives us a sense of greater self-awareness. It can improve our relationships. It's helpful with pain management. It can give us a lot of tools to have better coping skills. So it can increase our sense of resilience. It does create a mind and body connection. In many cases, reduces symptoms of PTSD. It helps us improve our decision making. And it can really help increase functions on the brain like creativity and memory. So in general, mindfulness increases our sense of well-being.
Incredible. Thank you. Juliana, speaking of the coping skills that you mentioned, I know a lot of us lead very, very busy lives and there's a lot going on. And, most of us tend to go through a series of emotions or sometimes even emotional roller coasters throughout the day. I wanted to speak about emotional regulation and how mindfulness can help, us cultivate self-awareness and self-regulation.
Well, mindfulness can help in many ways. Through practices like meditation, people can become more aware of their thoughts and their feelings. And that awareness helps them understand their patterns of thought and how emotionally they respond to certain triggers. As long as we have these patterns operating in the back of our unconscious mind, we won't be able to work with them. So, with meditation, we can bring these patterns from our unconscious mind into the conscious mind. And when we see them, actually, when we see what it is going on, we can start having the changes that are needed. We can actually start changing these kind of patterns. With body scans that are practiced in mindfulness, what we do is that we place our attention on different parts of our body. And what we're doing is noticing physical sensations on these different parts. This can be really helpful, creating awareness of how reactions to emotions and stress show in the body, because it shows in a very physical way, which can provide incredible insight into our emotional states at any given time. So by looking back at these sensations, just the simple sensations, we start having this sense of groundingness in our body, and we can start feeling safer holding strong emotions. And this helps us work with these emotions in a safe way. There's practices like mindful journaling, where you can write your experiences, your thoughts, your emotions. And when you do this regularly, you start becoming aware of patterns and triggers, you know. You can also do mindful eating, where you're paying attention to the sensory experiences of eating, which it can be very helpful to become aware of our eating habits and any emotional eating triggers that we have. In terms of emotional regulation, we learn to observe our thoughts and our emotions without criticism. So we don't suppress our emotions, but we actually observe them in this safe space that we have created. That way we can start understanding our reactions much better. We start understanding why of the triggers that we have. And we start understanding how these triggers might come from deep fears or deep wounds. So as we hold these fears and these wounds tenderly, we learn to act instead of react. And that can be really useful, regulating ourselves more effectively. Also, breathing exercises regulate our nervous system. And we can use as well coping strategies like self-compassion or gratitude practices to reduce our focus from this negativity or these negative aspects of life and redirect them towards more positive aspects. And as we understand our emotions, our thinking patterns, we learn mindful communication, because we can start expressing ourselves, our feelings and needs more clearly. And the way that we learn to communicate that is from the I feel perspective versus you make me feel perspective, which can reduce a lot of conflict and improves our relationships.
Amazing. And Juliana, you mentioned earlier you started going into wounds, fear, the nervous system, and body sensations. And you mentioned mindfulness being helpful in pain management. Could you speak a little bit into that, please?
Usually what happens is that the body has all these sensations in the body, and what happens is that the sensations go all the way up into our head, and we classify them if they're good sensations or not so good sensations. And the mind starts rejecting the ones that don't feel that great and craving the ones that feel great. So mindfulness is very helpful in showing us how we have this cravings and these aversions towards certain experiences. What mindfulness does is that help us go back into our body to observe sensations just as sensations. And we are able to separate these sensations from the stories that are happening in our mind. And when we separate things like this, things become more manageable to work with. When we, in case of pain, for example, when we look at sensations in the body, we are detaching ourselves from the story. Maybe this pain is never going to go away. My life is ruined. I can't handle this anymore. So we detach the story from actually the physical sensation. And in that, we start observing this constellation of movement in the body, where you can share within the whole context of your body this movement, so it doesn't feel so severe and so trapped and so condensed. And what happens is that many times pain is not only the physical pain that we feel, but it is very connected to the story that we're telling ourselves. So creating this separation between these physical sensations in the body and the mind can be very alleviating for not only physical pain, but emotional pain.
That's incredible. I actually had the experience of what you just described during a 10-day Vipassana silent meditation of being able to disappear pain. It was remarkable. It actually really works. Juliana, I wanted to ask you, mindfulness is all about returning to the present moment and observing and very much being in the present. But we also live in a society that's very goal orientated and very sort of future and forward looking. How does one strike a balance between being in the present moment, but also having future goals and making future plans?
Mindfulness is not about avoiding or neglecting goals, but rather about enhancing the quality of your presence and engagement to actually be able to materialize those goals. Planning is an activity that can perfectly happen in the present moment. We mindfully engage into the steps of accomplishing that goal, doing one step at a time. I feel like when we're fully engaged in this planning and execution of these goals, actually they start manifesting in more concrete ways. I feel like the problem is when we are in our head planning while you're, like, for example, in the middle of a romantic dinner, your date might be pouring his or her out and you are planning the accounting of this project that you're going to create. Well, at that moment, you're not present with what it is happening, but you can totally and absolutely be present when the moment is to plan and set up goals for your future.
That's such a great example. And I wanted to ask you, do you have any personal examples or experiences that have happened to you where you've seen the transformative power within yourself of some of the mindfulness exercises?
I certainly have. I tended to be a very anxious person. As a matter of fact, I started having some panic attacks at some point in my life. Actually, after doing some ayahuasca ceremonies, I started experiencing all these fears start coming to the surface, and I started having some panic attacks, which I never had before. And with this practice, I was able to put some of the teachings into practice. So it's helpful when we're feeling very stressed or anxious. The first thing that we need to do is to remind ourselves that we can pause. Many times in the middle of a very stressful day, we just continue going, and that sense of like we need to continue going can actually create a lot of chaos. So we remind ourselves that we can pause. And in that pause, one thing that we can do is start consciously breathing, placing our attention in our breath, taking deep breaths and exhaling the breath even deeper, and maybe noticing the pause between those breaths. We can also start placing our attention in parts of the body where there is some pleasant or some neutral sensations happening, and we can start accompanying these sensations with the breath. That can help us ground a little bit if we feel like we're very unstable. Once we find that sense of groundingness, a little bit more of ease, then we can start observing directly how this stress or this anxiety physically manifests. For example, I can feel anxiety, this tingling sensation in my body. So I focus into that. Maybe my chest feels compressed. My breath might feel slow, or maybe at moments it feels like I'm not breathing. So I can notice also as well, it's helpful to notice if these sensations feel solid, or we can start sensing and noticing if it has some movement in them. By doing this, like I said before, we're separating the physical sensation of stress or anxiety from the story that the mind is telling itself. Just to do that, it's helpful, because as we separate the whole experience into these tiny little areas, it feels less solid and less overpowering. So we hold the physical sensation of stress and anxiety and we breathe with it. And then we observe the story. What is crossing my mind? What emotions come attached to this story? What is that I'm telling myself? What am I reviewing? What is the belief? What is the fear? And it's really helpful to ask ourselves this question: what's the worst that can happen with this belief that I'm holding? And what emotional component is attached to that belief? So observing this can start diminishing all, or separating this, not diminishing, but separating these beliefs. Like, for example, I can believe that I am a failure because I had a bad meeting today. So we hold the belief of being a failure and we ask ourselves, am I really a failure? It might sound very true, but is it real? So we start finding maybe the cracks in it. Another thing we can do is to redirect the mind. If we're having like these very insistent thoughts, I'm a failure, things are going to go bad, and it becomes kind of this habitual thing of the mind that cannot let go. So when things like that happen, what we can do is we redirect the mind to gratitude practices, for example, where we can do these meta practices where we grab one phrase, for example, I am peaceful, I am love, and we use it as a mantra. So we intentionally relax the mind and whatever contraction is in the body as we are repeating ourselves this mantra. So there's many ways that we can observe our anxiety, and many tools that we can use to help redirect our mind and ease that sensation in the body that can be very overpowering.
Thank you so much for taking the time to share about your own personal experience, and particularly for sharing so candidly about, your ayahuasca experience and how it led to panic attacks and anxiety and all of that, because I thought it's such a great reminder that plant medicines aren't necessarily for everyone. And, we spend a lot of time on this channel talking about plant medicine preparation and facilitation and integration and all of that. It was such a great reminder that, to always treat plant medicine ceremonies and the use of plant medicines with the utmost respect, mindfulness, and reverence, and to make sure that you always in a good space and with a good facilitator, and that you integrate the journey well afterwards. And things like panic attacks and finding the fear can actually be, almost like the medicine highlighting something that needs to be looked at and addressed. So seen in the right context, it can be a very powerful and very helpful experience. So thank you for sharing yours.
And if I may, Gaia, which I think it's important also, having these tools, not relying just on the plant medicine itself, which can be very revealing and very helpful, but to integrate after some kind of tool that can help you go through whatever is surfacing. It's important.
Absolutely. Juliana, I would love you to share some exercises and tips and techniques that you find could be helpful for people on a day-to-day basis around mindfulness, please.
Yes, of course. One could be mindful breathing. We can do this at any time or anywhere. If we feel stressed or the mind feels very busy, with all these kind of overwhelming thoughts, we can just concentrate for just some minutes on the breath, just noticing how the breath comes in and the breath comes out. It's a very simple exercise, but it really takes us out of the busyness of the mind and eases the mind. As we practice that more often, we really stop paying so much attention to all these unuseful thoughts that the mind has. But it's a very simple thing that we can do anytime, anywhere. Another thing that we can do when our mind is all over the place, we can effectively come back into the body and calm the mind by feeling any sensation in our body, like sensations on our legs against the chair that we're sitting at work, or feel sensations on our feet as they're touching the floor or the shoe, or just simply concentrate on sensations of like the weight of the body, the sense of heaviness, the feeling on how gravity pulls the body down. That is very helpful to ground us. And when I speak about grounding, means bringing the awareness back into the body and not so much in our head, and that can help us feel much more settled. Another exercise that is very useful is when we're having stressful conversations, to keep our awareness 30% in our body while we're having the conversation can help ground us, as well as to be more present in that conversation. One thing that I recommend a lot of people that don't have the willingness to meditate, or if they feel like they can't, a great exercise is to sit sometime during the day or the night. Let's say you sit for 15 minutes with no TV, no phone, no music, nothing, just you, and see what you feel. Observe what thoughts start crossing your mind. You can do this walking, as long as you don't have music, or you don't, just walk and see what thoughts cross your mind or what emotions are there. Another practice that is helpful is to shift our focus from scarcity and negativity with a gratitude journal, where we write what are you thankful in life, and that can help you shift your perspectives on many things. And lastly, is to start understanding the feeling tone in your body. Notice how experience feel pleasant, and what sensations accompany these pleasant experiences, and how your mind tries to attach to them, and also how you experience unpleasantness, and see the sensations in your body, and see how your mind tries to repel these unpleasant experiences, and to look at them just as sensations, and see if you can approach them that way, in a more equanimous way, will help you very much to create a more equanimous response to what's pleasant and to what's unpleasant. It creates a huge expansion in your window of tolerance to things.
Juliana, thank you. There are people who are watching these videos and interviews who may have not experienced mindfulness breathing or mindfulness meditation, and there are some who practice it regularly. And I know you have very kindly offered to lead us through both a mindfulness breathing exercise and a mindfulness meditation. So I would love to take you up on that offer.
Yeah, absolutely. We can do a mindfulness breathing exercise.
Perfect. I would love to.
Okay. We usually start with a bell, so you can know the beginning of the meditation and the end of the meditation. And the beginning starts with one sound of the bell. So just begin by adjusting your posture in a way that is comfortable. It's good to have your spine slightly straight, but not stiff, just comfortable. And you may close your eyes, or if it doesn't feel comfortable to close your eyes, you can lower your gaze. And start by noticing if there is any area in your body that feels tense. And mindfully, in an intentional way, try to relax these areas. Sometimes it's helpful to breathe into that area of tension, imagining how the breath loosens and helps relax those muscles that feel so tense. And it's good to check with your jaw and release any tightness. And you can allow maybe the muscles of your face to relax. And looking at the neck and intentionally relaxing it. Intentionally relaxing your back, your arms, your hands, your fingers. And then intentionally relaxing the torso, going down to the legs, and finally your feet. And now let's start bringing your attention to your breath. Notice your breath and be mindful on how your body is always breathing. Be aware on how even we are always breathing, we don't notice it. We don't notice how our body is always performing the action of breathing. Such a mechanical function, though extremely important. So start by noticing where it's easiest for you to feel that breath. For some of you, might be a sensation around the nostrils. It could be for some others, the temperature of the breath, the cool air coming in and the warm air coming out. It could be sensations that manifest as the air goes in the bridge of the nose and comes out through the bridge of the nose. For some others, might be the touch of the breath on the back of the throat. Or it could be the noticing of the rise and the fall of the chest or the abdomen. And for some others, like it is for me, it's just the simple experience of the whole body breathing. So whichever is the easiest way for you to pay attention to your breaths, just stay there, simply focusing on that air that comes in and that air that comes out. And if you, for whatever reason, have a hard time noticing your breath, you really don't know where to place your attention, you can just put your hand over your abdomen and notice the raise and the fall of your hand. And let's just stay with the breath for just a little bit. If you happen to notice that your mind is wandering, gently notice your wandering mind and come back to the breath. Don't judge it. Simply notice and just come back to the breath, understanding that it's just the nature of the mind to wander. And as you feel this breath, let your mind and body relax. Allow your body to rest on that breath. Just one more breath. At this moment, there is nowhere to go, nothing to do, just to be here with your own breath. And if it's helpful for you, you can notice the beginning, the middle, and the end of the breath. The beginning with the in-breath, the middle of the breath, noticing the fullness of the chest and that small pause before releasing the breath. Notice how your chest contracts as the breath is released. And again, noticing the pause before that next breath. Another thing that is very useful to keep our concentration in our breath is to notice the quality of your breath. Note if it's deep or if it's fast. Maybe it feels harmonious. Could feel shaky or inconsistent. And whatever it is the case, just allow it to be. Don't force it. Just allow it to be however the breath wants to be. If you notice that the breath feels controlled, just notice how controlled your breath is at this moment. Don't try to change it. Don't try to change how naturally your breath is. Just notice it is how the breath is at this moment. And we notice each breath rising and passing away with this mindful awareness. Just here, awake, present, fully present with my breath. And whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes and move your body a little bit and come back.
Thank you so much for that, Juliana. It was such an interesting feeling of powerful and peaceful intertwined together. Really beautiful. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. It's just a little example of what the breath is. And this is just a short meditation, but you can keep this. The longer you can stay connected with your breath, you start feeling truly the wonders of what the breath can teach you.
Yeah, I can feel it already. Juliana, to those people who sometimes say, I meditate, but I don't feel anything, right? What are some ways that they can sort of track their progress and actually see that meditation and breathwork is making a profound difference?
Yeah, it's hard to measure progress with meditation because we're all so different. So I'm going to speak about my own experience, because other people can experience it in a very different way. And that's one thing that mindfulness teaches us, to be open to the experiences of others. It doesn't mean that my truth is the soleil truth. So you might start finding yourself more reflective. Maybe others will start giving you feedback about a difference that they see in you. You might communicate differently. You might start communicating from a more heart-centered space. You might start speaking a little bit more paused or with this sense of groundingness. I think as you create tolerance to be with difficult emotions and challenging emotions, they just might pass quicker. You might be a little bit more skillful in observing them and holding space for them. You might start enjoying a lot the silence. I would think that definitely compassion will start growing in you, and life becomes this curious playground. I think you might start enjoying a lot more being in nature, and you can maybe see that you can redirect your mind a little bit easier. You might be a lot more comfortable showing vulnerability. And I truly think that you might become more humble and more compassionate as you get in touch with your own humanity and the humanity of others.
Thank you so much for that. And Juliana, do you have any book recommendations or video recommendations that you could suggest or recommend to someone who's starting to follow this practice or wanting to deepen this practice?
Yeah, I always recommend the talks by Pema Chodron. I really love the way she explains these mindfulness concepts in a very easy, simple, but profound way. So I find her teachings very helpful. And any book of hers, it's very simple and very profound. She even has these little mini pocket books that you can open at any time and have like a profound teaching from her. I like the book The Body Keeps the Score by Dr. Van der Kolk. My teacher Jack Kornfield has this great book called The Wise Heart. My other teacher Tara Brach has this book called Radical Compassion, which goes really deep into compassion. I respect very much the teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh, also a very simple way of teaching. And he has this book, it's called The Art of Living, that I find very helpful. There is a book about that is written by Joseph Goldstein about mindful communication, which is called Say What You Mean, very helpful. And impermanence can be, and this change, of life that we're always experiencing, this uncertainty and life that can be very terrifying to some of us. There is this book by David Riccio called The 5 Things We Can't Change, which is very helpful.
I definitely need to read the one on impermanence. Thank you for that suggestion. Juliana, in closing, what is your message to the world around mindfulness?
Mindfulness, it's a beautiful way of creating this space of connection within yourself. And it's a tool that can blend really seamlessly with any spiritual practice. It gives you the sense of safety inside yourself. And when you create this relationship with yourself, you stop looking for comfort on the outside world, but really relaying in your internal resources. And that is a game changer, because we have been looking for comfort outside, many of us, for all our lives. And to be able to come back to create this safe space within you where you are not relying on external factors can be extremely comforting, and really can enhance very much your life and your journey.
Juliana, I want to say thank you for enhancing my life and my journey. And it has been a pleasure, as always, to spend this time with you. And most importantly, thank you for always sharing your information, your knowledge, and your insights with so much generosity. And thank you for leading us through an absolutely exquisite meditation. Really, I feel so peaceful after it. And thank you for always creating a space for peace and calm.
Thank you, Gaia. It's an absolute pleasure for me to spend this time with you, and feeling that I can maybe give a little bit of a snippet of a different perspective on a subject where people can just maybe find a little bit of comfort through the uncertainty of life.
And speaking of snippets of information and different topics, we touched a little bit on plant medicine and mindfulness during this interview. And I am very, very excited shortly to be recording another interview with Juliana around mindfulness and plant medicine, and a second one around mindfulness and family constellations. I can't wait for either. And if you would like to get in touch with Juliana, please feel free to comment below. We will put all the links to how to get hold of her, her website, and all of that. And if you have liked or enjoyed this content, please like, share, comment, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thank you again, Juliana.